Welcome back to the Morning Kickoff Show. I'm your host, Matt Witt, and we are back to cover Minnesota Vikings football this week, week 14. 1-4, the Minnesota Vikings will travel to Detroit, to Ford Field, to take on the 5-7 Detroit Lions for their first away divisional game of the season. Yes, it took until week 14 for us to travel on the road to take on a divisional opponent. This Sunday, 12 o'clock Central Time on Fox. Minnesota Vikings are 2-point underdogs in this game. How are the Vikings 2-point underdogs in this game? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this game, in this preview right here. Because yes, while the Detroit Lions are 5-7, they are arguably the hottest team in the entire NFL right now, winning 4 of their last 5, with their only loss being a 3-point loss to the Buffalo Bills. So as of right now, while in my opinion I cannot justify having a 2-point underdogs, what I can say is that I'm happy that we continue to be a doubted team around the league. Because when are the Vikings the best? The Vikings are the best when we expect for them to let us down. And for that reason, I'll have my hopes up. I will not allow everyone else to continue to hype up this Minnesota Vikings team, because when the Vikings are hyped up, we get humbled against the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. In this game, this is an important win for both teams right here. As of right now, these are the only 2 teams in the NFC North that you can consider playoff contenders right now. Now, the Minnesota Vikings, as of right now, have locked down this division and will have won this division already with a win over the Detroit Lions this week, as both the Bears and Packers are on a bye week. If the Vikings come up with the victory in this game, nobody else would be able to win the division, and it would be the first time since 2017 that the Vikings walk away with the division. Yes. It has been 4 years since the Vikings have been able to win a division, or 5 years since the Vikings have been able to take control of the NFC North. This is Kirk Cousins' division now. But as for the Detroit Lions, if the Lions want to make the playoffs as of right now, they need to win every NFC opponent that they're going to face. And like I mentioned, I mean, say what you want about the Detroit Lions. Earlier in this season, they were arguably the worst team in this league. As of right now, they, in my opinion, are the hottest team in this entire league right now, winning 4 of their last 5, with their only loss being a 3-point loss to the Buffalo Bills. Both teams must-win game. It is going to be fun to watch. And not only is it a must-win game, but there's one player in particular who wants to win this game more than any other player. And he wears purple and gold, and he was traded from the Detroit Lions on the Minnesota Vikings, T.J. Hawkinson. After the Vikings traded for T.J. Hawkinson, I mentioned how this is going to be a game that we have to circle on this season, because when he was traded and came to Minnesota, he was not very satisfied. Well, he was happy to play for Minnesota, but he kind of talked back on Detroit. He said some bad things about the Lions. And for that reason, I believe going into this game, going back to the field where he has played so many games so far, being booed from the fans is going to be fun to watch. And he's going to show Detroit why they were stupid to trade him away. And now, let's get into the injury report. Unfortunately for the Minnesota Vikings, this week has been the longest list of injury reports for the team. As of Wednesday, a lot of players did not participate during practice due to illnesses, which is going to hurt us, having this many players not participate in practice. However, most of these players have been cleared to play for Sunday. You still have some players who are questionable in this matchup, including our boy, CJ Hammer Time Ham. Unfortunately, questionable to play in this game with an illness. He has not participated with any practices yet this week. CJ Ham is one of those players who's been gradually getting a bigger workload as the season's been going on. I feel like Kevin O'Connell has kind of come to this realization that the Minnesota Vikings offensive line is not as good as we thought it was. And into this game, it would be great to see CJ Ham play, as he's being that additional blocker for the Minnesota Vikings, who lines up both in the backfield and at the line of scrimmage and has been a great impact for the team. Fortunately, also, Christian Darrisaw will likely return in this game. He is still questionable play as he was limited during this week with a concussion, but him playing in this game would be huge. I would expect more likely than not that Darrisaw is back, because we would not want to see Blake Brandel going up against Aiden Hutchinson. So it'd be great to see Christian Darrisaw step up in this game, having one of the best left tackles in the league going up against arguably the best rookie pass rusher in this league right now. Garrett Bradbury, questionable play in this game. He was limited with a back injury. And then onto the defensive side of the ball, Jonathan Bullard, once again, questionable play in this game with a bicep injury. Did not participate this week and will likely see James Lynch, or if not Lynch, then likely Ross Blacklock step up on that defensive front. This is a game where we need everybody on the defensive front to have a good day, because we are playing a very, very, very tough running offense right now with Jamal Williams leading the league in rushing touchdowns, having DeAndre Swift still playing at a very high level. It'd be great to see somebody step up. If Jonathan Bullard doesn't play in this game, we need to see James Lynch or Ross Blacklock have a career day on Sunday. Danielle Hunter and Harrison Smith also limited and did not participate this week with an illness as well. Big loss if we see those players lose, because those are the two players who's been in this defense the longest for the Minnesota Vikings. And then going on to the Lions sideline, Lions once again have a lot of injuries with the offensive line, which sucks for them because Lions have arguably the best offensive line when completely healthy. But with the loss of Vaitai, that's been a huge loss for them. Evan Brown has stepped up at right guard. Unfortunately, in this game, Evan Brown is questionable to play. He's limited participant this week with an ankle injury. Ragnow, their all-pro center, also questionable to play with a foot injury. He suffered with injuries throughout his entire career. Taylor Decker, Penei Sewell, these guys have also suffered with numerous injuries. And onto the defensive side of the ball for them, you have Derek Barnes, Deshaun Elliott, Jeff Okudah, and Will Harris. Those are huge losses. 3 players, starting players in the secondary, and Derek Barnes, a core player at the linebacker position for them. So some big losses right there, especially when you're going up against a very, very, very good passing team that is the Minnesota Vikings. Last time the Vikings met against the Detroit Lions earlier this season at US Bank Stadium, we were not that tough of a passing offense. They were really able to contain Justin Jefferson, which is something we didn't know was going to happen. Now having TJ Hawkinson is going to be likely a different story. Obviously, we'll likely see Adam Thielen utilized more. We'll likely run the ball more. So I'm assuming that into this game, the Vikings don't go into the game with the same playbook they had against the Lions the last time we played them. Still, with that being said, I believe this is going to be a very, very, very high scoring game. Looking at it right now for the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions, both teams are allowing over 414 yards per game, which is the 2 worst in the entire league. You are seeing the 2 worst defenses going up against very tough offenses. And for that reason, I'm going to say this will likely be one of those games where you see more than 60 points scored. And in my opinion, it might top even more than 70 points scored in this game. It is going to be a shootout, and it might just come down to whoever has the ball last. I feel like on a majority, in my opinion, there's going to be less than 6 punts total in this game. I believe that these are both very tough offenses going up against lackluster to terrible defenses. On top of this, the Lions have allowed more points than any other team in the entire NFL. So for right now, if the Vikings don't have a good offensive field day against the Lions, I don't know what I'm going to do, because this Vikings team has too many weapons to have another bad day offensively, and I'm hoping our offense can just score more points than the Lions. That's all I'm asking. Just score more points than the Lions. Just have a shootout. If you score on a majority of your drives, and you only have maybe 1 3-and-out, I'll give them 1 3-and-out. I don't want to see more than 1 3-and-out in this game when you're playing the Lions defense, please. Especially with the injuries that they've had right now. Please, please, please be able to get those points on the board that the Lions cannot respond with. Fortunately for the Minnesota Vikings, having Dalvin Tomlinson back is huge. So this is going to be one of those key players on defense that I'm trying to stay optimistic. I know a lot of Vikings fans, we don't have our hopes very high for this Vikings defense, but I'm trying to stay optimistic here. Dalvin Tomlinson can likely be one of those players who will be a huge a huge comeback for the Minnesota Vikings, having him on this defensive front. Unfortunately, in this game, though, Cam Dantzler's not going to play. He's still on IR. Andrew Booth Jr. is out the whole season. Meaning, once again, Vikings fans, with Caleb Evans out on IR, with Caleb Evans, Cam Dantzler, and Andrew Booth Jr. on IR, we are going to have to see Duke Shelley go out there once again. Yes, that's Duke Shelley. Now, while he might not have allowed a touchdown yet this season, I believe, still, Duke Shelley is going to be the player that Jared Goff will be throwing to this entire game. Ever since Caleb Evans and Cam Dantzler have been out, quarterbacks aren't even throwing in Patrick Peterson's direction. And since Patrick Peterson stays on one side of the field, you're likely going to see mismatches with Amon-Ra St. Brown and DJ Chark going up against Duke Shelley, where once again, Minnesota Vikings fans, don't be surprised if Jared Goff throws for over 350 passing yards on this Minnesota Vikings defense. Key on offense in this game, I'm going to have to say, feed TJ Hawkinson. As I mentioned earlier in this episode, TJ Hawkinson, in my opinion, wants to win this game more than any other Viking. I don't believe there's a single Viking on this team that wants to win this game more than TJ Hawkinson after he's played with the Lions for some time now, and they traded him away for little to nothing. Essentially, it came down to just a a second-round draft pick for a player who looked like a hit in the first round for the Lions. So not a really understandable trade when it comes to the Lions team. So I believe TJ Hawkinson is here for that revenge. Maybe there's something the Lions know that we don't know. Maybe TJ Hawkinson knows something that we don't. Maybe there's bad blood between the two. I don't know. I'm just hoping TJ Hawkinson in this game can show why you don't trade a young star to a divisional opponent and goes up for over 150 receiving yards on the Detroit Lions defense, which is very possible. That's very possible. If we see more double and triple teams to Justin Jefferson like we've seen, he'll still be the first read on most passes. But at the end of the day, I mean, as we've seen from Justin Jefferson's career, he can be contained. He can be contained when you double and triple team him, as just about every other receiver in the NFL can be. For that reason, you got to go to your next man up, which this season, since we've traded for TJ Hawkinson, has been Hawkinson. Adam Thielen, Hawkinson, these are guys that will likely have maybe the best day of their season so far for the Minnesota Vikings, and in TJ Hawkinson's case, the best game of his career with the Minnesota Vikings. Key on defense, please, no Amon-Ra St. Brown mismatches. I've talked about it already in this episode, and I'm going to say, Vikings fans, Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to likely have one of the best days of his career against the Minnesota Vikings. I believe he will. The Detroit Lions know this. Why put Amon-Ra St. Brown, line him up on the right against Patrick Peterson, when you can just throw him one-on-one against Duke Shelley all game long? You know how this Minnesota Vikings defense runs. They run a soft zone defense where they just run one-on-one zone defense against whoever is on the outside, which in this case will be Amon-Ra St. Brown, who will just run past Duke Shelley and just eat up those yards all game long for the Detroit Lions. For that reason, in this game, I believe that please, no mismatches on Amon-Ra St. Brown. I know it's going to happen. If he lines up in the slot, he'll be going against Chandon Sullivan. If he lines up on the outside, he'll likely be going against Duke Shelley. And Jared Goff's going to be throwing into his direction all game long, as Duke Shelley just a few months ago didn't even have a job. And for the bold prediction of the week, I have the Minnesota Vikings and Detroit Lions being that game that happens forever, for a long time. I believe this will be the longest noon game of the week. Every week, Central Time, there seemed to be that one noon game that just ends up on national TV eventually because it's so close. A lot of tension in the last 5 minutes, lasts forever. I believe it's going to be that game. You have two high-powered, two-dimensional offenses going up against arguably the two worst defenses in the league, the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings. For that reason, I have this game just coming down to whoever has the ball last at the end of the day, meaning my final prediction, who's going to have the ball last? The Minnesota Vikings. I have the Vikings winning this game in another one-possession victory, one-score victory, 38-31 over the Detroit Lions. Wow, that is a total of 70 points scored. 69 points scored in this game. Minnesota Vikings 38-31 over the Detroit Lions. Let me know what y'all think.